A heavy wooden mask covers your face, and the pungent smell of burning sage fills your lungs in the dark. You beat a hollow bone drum, staring at the wild, dancing flames as the entire tribe waits for your command. Today, you might view this ritual as primitive superstition, but for 99% of human history, this was your absolute reality. Back then, the spirit world was not a distant myth, but a living force that controlled your survival every single day. You did not separate the physical from the spiritual. A shadow in the forest was a demon. A storm was anger. As the first shaman, you were the bridge between the seen and the unseen, translating the whispers of the wind. Without your guidance, your people would walk blindly through a hostile wilderness, constantly terrified of the angry forces around them. But is there any physical proof that your ancestors actually practiced these intense spiritual rituals so many thousands of years ago? The concrete evidence lay buried in the dirt for 12,000 years, waiting for archaeologists to uncover a mysterious grave. Researchers have dug up ancient sites, revealing the carefully preserved remains of the very first spiritual leaders of humanity. These ancient graves contain bizarre items that prove these early humans possessed a deep, complex belief in the supernatural world. They did not just bury their dead. They arranged them with ritualistic items to ease their journey into the afterlife. Where did scientists find the oldest confirmed shaman grave in the world? And what did they discover inside the tomb? The answer was found in a small cave in Israel, holding the bones of a truly unique prehistoric woman. What strange animal relics were buried with this ancient priestess? And why did they choose to decorate her body this way? In a cave called Hilazon Taktit, archaeologist Lior Grossman uncovered a 12,000-year-old grave that shocked the scientific community. Inside lay the skeleton of a small, elderly woman who suffered from a physical disability that made her limp. But she was not an outcast. Her people buried her with extraordinary honors, placing 86 tortoise shells around her body. They also placed the pelvis of a leopard, the wing of a golden eagle, and a human foot inside her grave. This complex arrangement of animal parts was not random trash. It was the sacred regalia of a powerful prehistoric shaman. Imagine the massive effort required to gather and capture 86 wild tortoises just to perform a single funeral ritual. She was the first documented spiritual mediator, a revered figure who guided her tribe through the dangerous transition of death. But how did these ancient spiritual leaders convince their tribes that they could actually speak to the invisible spirit world? The secret did not just lie in their animal costumes, but in how they manipulated the human brain itself. By using sensory techniques, they could trigger powerful visual and auditory hallucinations that felt completely, undeniably real to everyone. They discovered that certain repetitive actions could temporarily unlock hidden, mystical pathways inside the complex human nervous system. Your ancestors' brains were biologically identical to yours, meaning they were highly susceptible to these intense neurological experiences. They did not need modern drugs to see spirits. They had the power of extreme environment and rhythmic vibration. What exactly happens to your modern brain when you beat a drum in a dark, silent cave for hours? How did the rhythmic patterns of the shaman's drum physically alter the brainwaves of your prehistoric ancestors? When you beat a drum at a steady rate of 4 to 7 beats per second, something magical happens inside. This specific frequency matches your brain's theta waves, which are typically active during deep dreaming and intense meditation. In the pitch-black darkness of a cave, this auditory driving quickly coaxes your brain into a state of waking dream. Your visual cortex begins to misfire, creating floating geometric patterns, bright tunnels of light, and shifting animal silhouettes. You are not just imagining these spirits. Your brain is actively generating them due to extreme sensory deprivation. Scientists have mapped this phenomenon, proving that cave art often matches the visual patterns seen during theta wave trances. David Lewis Williams argued that the earliest cave paintings were actually records of these vivid, hallucinatory journeys into the underworld. The shaman did not paint what they saw in the daylight, but what they witnessed in the deep trance. Why did your ancestors trust these trippy visions as absolute truths, instead of dismissing them as simple brain glitches? The answer lies in how your brains are naturally wired to seek intentions and minds behind every physical event. Evolution programmed your brain to be highly paranoid, always assuming that someone or something is lurking in the shadows. This cognitive bias made it incredibly easy for early humans to believe that the entire universe was alive with spirits. Every rustling leaf and falling stone was interpreted as the deliberate action of an invisible, thinking entity watching them. What evolutionary benefit did this paranoia provide? And how did it shape the way we view the natural world? Why does your brain still see faces in the clouds? And how did this survival trait birth the first gods? In the wild savanna, hearing a rustle in the grass and assuming it is a predator keeps you alive and safe. If you assume it is just the wind, but it is actually a tiger, you become a quick meal. This survival bias is called the hyperactive agency detection device, and it makes you project life onto inanimate objects. Anthropologist Stephen Guthrie showed that humans naturally anthropomorphize their surroundings, seeing human-like faces and minds in nature.
To your ancestors, the thunder was not a meteorological event, but a giant.
Angry spirits shouting from the sky!
The shaman utilized this natural instinct, claiming they could negotiate with these forces to protect the vulnerable tribe. By giving the storms and predators a human face, the shaman made the terrifying wilderness feel controllable and manageable. You could not argue with the wind, but you could offer a ritual sacrifice to the spirit of the wind. This belief in a living world, known as animism, became the default worldview for almost all early human societies. But these individual beliefs were not enough to keep a large group of humans cooperating over long periods of time. The tribe needed shared stories that could bind them together when the campfire was lit at night. How did these nighttime fireside chats fundamentally change the way human minds connected with one another across the savannah?
Ultimate storyteller,
Researchers have studied how the content of human conversation changes dramatically when the sun goes down and fires are lit. What did anthropologist Polly Wiesner discover about the social power of storytelling around the prehistoric campfire at night? Anthropologist Polly Wiesner studied the conversations of the Jufuansi Bushmen, comparing daytime talk with nighttime fireside discussions. But at night, 80% of the talk shifted entirely to storytelling, mythology,
70% of their
and
conversation was about work,
the darkness
hunting,
erased individual
food,
conflicts,
and social complaints
and
or
the
gossip.
shared focus on the fire allowed the shaman to guide their minds. By sharing stories of ancestral spirits, the shaman created a collective consciousness that united the entire group. These stories helped the tribe maintain social order and cooperate far beyond Robin Dunbar's natural limit of 150. A shared belief system acted as the glue that kept strangers from killing each other when resources were scarce. If you believe the same forest spirit watches both of us, we are no longer enemies, we are brothers. But how exactly did these stories transition from simple campfire tales into highly organized, terrifying initiation rituals in caves? To cement these beliefs, the shaman had to drag the youth away from the comfort of the camp. They had to plunge them into the terrifying heart of the earth to face their ultimate trial. Only through intense fear and sensory deprivation could a child's mind be permanently rewritten into an adult's. What did these terrifying cave initiations look like? And how did they imprint the spirits onto the young mind? Why did prehistoric teenagers crawl into the deepest, narrowest crevices of caves to leave their handprints? Imagine walking deep into a freezing, pitch-black cave, guided only by a flickering torch that casts monstrous shadows. The shaman leads you through tight stone passages where cave bears once slept and scratched the walls. Suddenly, the shaman extinguishes the torch, leaving you in complete, absolute, and suffocating darkness for many long hours. In this silence, your brain, starving for light, starts projecting the painted bison on the walls as moving spirits. You hear the breathing of the earth, and you feel the presence of your ancestors standing right beside you. When the torch is relit, you press your charcoal-covered hand against the stone wall, leaving a permanent mark.
This handprint is your signature, proving to the tribe that you have crossed the boundary, faced the spirits, and survived.
The extreme trauma of the experience permanently cements the shaman's teachings, binding you to the tribe's laws forever. Cave art sites like Chauvet show clear evidence of children's footprints alongside ritualistic animal drawings deep inside. These caves were not art galleries. They were the sacred, high-intensity classrooms of the first human religions. But the shaman's power was not limited to initiating the young and explaining the weather during storms.
They were also the tribe's first doctors, responsible for saving precious lives when sickness and injury struck.
They had to combine real botanical knowledge of forest plants with the powerful psychological magic of belief. How did the shaman cure physical disease using the mind? And does this ancient magic still work today? How did prehistoric medicine men utilize the placebo effect long before science understood how it worked? When a hunter fell ill with a fever, the shaman did not just hand them a healing leaf. They danced, chanted, and called upon the spirits of the forest to draw the sickness out of the body. The leaf they used, like willow bark, actually contained salicin, which is the active ingredient in modern aspirin. But the chemical was only half the cure. The other half was the dramatic theatrical ritual of the shaman. The intense belief that the spirits were healing you triggered a massive release of endorphins in your brain. Tien click hua kiknya. This psychological response, known as the placebo effect, physically reduced your pain and actively boosted your immune system. The shaman was a master of psychoneuroimmunology, using ritual to hack the body's natural and complex healing systems. They knew that a patient who believed they would live was far more likely to survive the winter. This combination of plant science and psychological magic kept your species alive for tens of thousands of years. It allowed your ancestors to survive injuries and infections that would have easily wiped out other animal species. But as the human population grew, these temporary, mobile rituals began to transform into something much larger. The spirits of the forest were no longer enough, and that the tribe needed a permanent place to worship. They began to build massive stone structures that would anchor their beliefs to a single spot forever. Where did this transition from wandering shamans to permanent temples take place? And how did it change history? How did the construction of the world's first temple at Göbekli Tepe force humans to invent agriculture? For a long time, historians believed that humans invented agriculture first, settled down, and then built temples. But the discovery of Göbekli Tepe in modern Turkey completely inverted this traditional timeline of human history. Built 11,500 years ago, this massive religious site contains dozens of T-shaped stone pillars. These pillars are carved with dangerous wild animals, representing the powerful spiritual totems of different hunting clans. Crucially, there are no houses, no domestic crops, and no water sources near this grand stone sanctuary. This means hunter-gatherers traveled from hundreds of miles away just to gather and perform rituals at this temple. To feed the thousands of workers building these stone giants, they had to gather wild grasses in large quantities. Over generations, this intensive gathering of grass led to the accidental domestication of wheat, birthing the agricultural revolution. Therefore, it was not agriculture that built the temple. It was the temple that created agriculture in the ancient world. The shaman's rituals had grown so powerful that they forced humanity to rewrite its entire lifestyle. Your ancestors traded the freedom of the forest for the hard, grinding labor of the farming fields to feed the gods. But did this transition to farming in cities finally make the old shamanic rituals completely obsolete for your minds? It did not. The need for ritual only grew stronger as human societies became more complex. The ancient drums of the shaman simply transformed into the grand organ music of modern cathedrals. How exactly did the ancient shaman's tools evolve into the massive religious institutions that still rule your society today? As centuries passed, the ancient shaman's leather mask slowly became the golden crown of the high priest. The simple forest spirits were organized into complex pantheons of gods who demanded strict moral laws from citizens. These highly organized religions allowed empires to grow, keeping millions of citizens cooperating under a single shared faith. But your brain did not change. It still carried the same prehistoric programming developed on the ancient savanna. You still needed the sensory overload, the rhythmic music, and the group trance to feel connected to others. When you attend a massive music concert today, you are actually participating in a modern shamanic ritual. The flashing stage lights match the cave torches, and the bass drum synchronizes your heartbeats with the crowd. You feel a wave of intense euphoria, a sense of belonging to something far larger than yourself. Your brain is releasing the exact same cocktail of dopamine and oxytocin that your ancestors felt around the fire. Your modern clothes have replaced the fur cloak, but the primal biology of trance remains completely unchanged. The modern world is clean and logical, yet your brain still craves the mystery of the supernatural forces. Your mind seeks meaning in horoscopes, crystals, and modern cults because the empty savanna still echoes inside. Why did evolution make this spiritual craving so deeply embedded that we cannot seem to erase it? The answer is that a prehistoric human who believes in nothing is a human who struggles to cooperate. Why is our modern lack of shared rituals causing a dramatic rise in loneliness and depression? In sterile modern cities, you have separated your body from the dirt, the fire, and the tribe. You sit alone in front of a cold screen, isolated from the physical rituals that once bound the tribe. Without the collective trance of the campfire, your brain feels a deep, evolutionary sense of loneliness and isolation. The loss of these shared spiritual myths has left a deep vacuum in modern social structures for you today. You look for connection in online tribes, but these digital screens cannot replicate the physical fire's magic at night. Your biology still expects the rhythmic drum, the rattle, the smoke, and the voice of the elder. Some psychologists are now using ancient shamanic drum circles to treat severe cases of modern trauma and depression. By returning to the theta wave trance, patients can calm their overactive and exhausted modern stress responses. This therapy suggests that you cannot fully cure your modern mind without embracing your ancient evolutionary history. Your ancestors spent centuries trying to escape the dark cave, only to realize they left their balance inside. Your modern mind is a product of deep evolutionary survival, shaped by a world of spirits. You have conquered the wilderness, but your brain still remembers the old gods of the forest. The next time you feel a shiver down your spine in a dark room, remember your history. Your brain is not broken. It is simply doing what it was designed to do to survive. For that heavy wooden mask covering your face and the pungent smell of burning sage are never truly gone.